Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. We are keeping ourselves trucking right along here, going into the 9th level spells for the Witch. Now, really, this is where you see the upper limits of any full spellcasting class's power. But with the Witch here, bear in mind that in combination with their ability to hex opponents, they can get a little bit more mileage out of certain kinds of spells that maybe wouldn't go over so well for other spellcasters. Things that are save or die, save or suck, or any other variations of these save or kind of spells. Anything that allows any sort of will save, fortitude save, stuff like that. That said, though, there are still plenty of spells that are just going to be flat out mechanically more effective. And as always, I've got those listed in order here with blue, greens, yellows, and then finally reds as the bottom tier things. All based off of the legendary Treant Monk's, his own guides for different character classes and the like. But enough of me rambling on. Let's get cracking on this, shall we? So, starting us off here is, of course, one of my favorite lines of spells to use for any caster, and that's Summon Monster 9. And here with this one, you are finally starting to top off with creatures like Astral Devas, Ice Devils, Cloud Giants, just so many others. It's really, really handy to have. Most of these creatures are going to have incredible spell-like abilities, or if they don't have spell-like abilities, they're just going to absolutely be total monsters on the battlefield. And with you distributing them amongst or around the battlefield, either near your allies, in the thick of the enemy, you're going to really be able to create a lot of havoc and get a lot of extra turns on your own turn. And as always, you're going to be able to summon more monsters from the lesser spell lists from further back. So you're going to really, really, really enjoy making use of this thing. It's just so awesome. That said, one drawback that I should mention here, not a lot of campaigns get to the point to where your spellcasters are going to have access to their 9th level spells. So this may not come up all that often unless you're already playing in a higher level campaign and have a higher level story going. So, this is, you get the idea. After that, though, we have Mind Blank Communal. It works exactly like the Mind Blank spell, but you can now divide up the 24-hour duration in 1-hour increments amongst other creatures. So you and your party need to keep your minds free and clear for a while. Well, if there's 4 of you, each of you takes 8 hours there. And you can cast this over and over again as needed. And, it's assuming that if you're I could end up rambling a little bit too much here. Point being, there's a lot of different uses for this spell, a lot of different ways you can distribute this in order to make sure that the party keeps themselves free from any attempts at detection from, whoever's trying to do that to you is likely not going to be friendly. So keeping your brains covered is definitely a great way to go about keeping yourselves just marginally safer. And then we have Greater Create Demiplane. Now, works like Create Demiplane, but you affect a larger area and have a higher degree of control. This ain't going to be a combat spell. It's nothing you're going to use with any sort of regularity like that. But when you're setting up a little safe zone in a spot that's otherwise incredibly hostile, like, say, the elemental plane of fire, one of the layers of the abyss, anything like that, that's going to do a lot to just filter out and keep away a lot of opponents that otherwise might have easier access to you. You may still be having to deal with the hostile wildlife and the native denizens of whatever plane you're on, but then again, you're casting 9th level spells. There's a lot you can do to keep those away as well, too. And then we have Dominate Monster. Speaking of trying to keep creatures away, this spell works exactly like Dominate Person, but it's not restricted in any way by any creature type. And pick your target really well, as by this point, a lot of creatures are going to have really good will saves by the time you get this. And there'll be a fair number that have out-and-out immunity to this kind of thing overall. So, definitely pick your targets wisely, but you can still get a bit more mileage out of this with the aforementioned hexes, forcing your targets to reroll or taking penalties to their saves. So, this one you can definitely make some pretty good use of. But after that, we have Polar Midnight, another really good spell. It's a close range one, so it's at 25 feet plus 5 feet every couple levels or so. 30-foot spread, and it lasts 1 round a level, and there's fortitude saves for partial effects. And what you do is that you bring an unnatural Arctic chill to an area that you target, and this drops light sources down by 2 categories. So maximum total darkness, this doesn't create any sort of magical darkness. Creatures that are in the area of effect are going to take 5d6 cold damage and 1d6 dexterity damage. Now, succeeding on the fortitude save negates the dex damage, but not the cold. So, unless they have some sort of cold resistance, they're going to be taking full damage every round that they're in this. 5d6 isn't great. You're averaging around 15 to 17 points of damage per round, and by this point, there's plenty of creatures that can eat that. But the damage really isn't the thing that's interesting here, or that makes us any kind of good. What is handy here is that targets who don't move on their turn while they're in this area of effect become encased in ice. And it works like the Wall of Ice spell. The target will also be made helpless, and they cannot breathe. Corpses that are in the area longer than 1 round will turn to solid ice and can only be brought back to life with true resurrection, miracle, or wish. So what this is doing is this will prevent your opponents from being able to take any sort of full round action. They're going to have to move. Or if they fail to, they are going to be getting sealed up in ice, and then they are just going to start dying off. Well, either the cold damage will eventually do it to them, or suffocating while being trapped inside of a sheet of ice will do the work for you. And then after that, you make it much more difficult for them to come back. Now, there are going to be plenty of creatures immune to just dying from asphyxiation and things like that. Golems, any number of angels, demons, devils, azatas, Ifriti, any creatures that are more of a spiritual substance than physical, they're not going to have much trouble with this. Same with the undead as well. But this is still a pretty good spell. It's good area control. It's good. It's got solid damage to it, but you're going to be forcing your opponents to be burning up actions rather than becoming trapped. And I would still wager, even though they can't die of asphyxiation, creatures becoming trapped in ice and being pinned in place, being unable to move or attack reliably, that's still going to be really handy to have, even if you're not going to kill them right away. But speaking of killing things off, we have Massacre. Now, this affects a 60-foot line. It's an instantaneous effect, and there's fortitude saves to negate. And you fire just a beam of necromantic energy that will kill any creature 17 hit dice or lower, or if they're a level 17th character. And you can affect a number of hit dies that's equal to 1d4 hit die per caster level on your part. So level 20, you get to roll 20 4-sided dice to see how many levels you affect. Or you can just roll 1 and multiply it by whatever you roll. So, 20 times 4, you're topping out at 80 hit dice worth of creatures that you can affect. Now, the line will keep going through firing until the spell runs out of hit dice. Anything that's 18 hit dice or higher will be unaffected by this. If the spell hits or affects no one, at the end of that 60-foot line, it will explode, dealing 10d6 points of necrotic damage, plus 1 for every caster level. So, again, level 20 is the example. It's plus 20 damage on top of the 10d6. So, if you roll max, that's 80 damage. It's not bad. There's no saving throw for that part, but that's really not the great thing here. The awesome thing is being able to kill off a level 17 opponent, possibly a couple level 17 opponents or lower. Because even as a 20th level spellcaster, a couple of level 17s coming at you is going to be problematic. You're going to want to get rid of that pretty fast. The only, other than the 10d6 points of damage, which, you know, that's a nice kicker to have there at the end in case you don't end up being able to affect anything. But, you know, it's necromantic energy, it's an instant death effect. There are still going to be some creatures that are not affected by this spell. It's why it doesn't exactly rank a whole lot higher. It's just, and the fact, there's just so much here, and you already know what I'm getting at with this. Creatures that are immune to death effects, it's fortitude saves, and again, at this high of a level, there's going to be plenty of creatures that have really good fortitude saves. The big saving grace for this is it's going to work well with your hexes. But beyond that, you know, this is not a bad choice by any stretch. It's a good one, and you can affect multiple opponents with it, which is fantastic. But, you know, bear in mind that you may have some more effective options like Polar Midnight, or just summoning a couple of monsters using Summon Monster 9. But where this one's a good choice, the next couple aren't really all that great, but they just have that kind of witch sort of flavoring to them. They really, really fit with that archetype. And first is Wail of the Banshee. Now it's close range, and you affect one living creature per level that are within a 40-foot radius, and it's an instant effect. Fortitude saves negate it, though. And you let loose this soul-rending scream that will kill any creature that hears it, and it deals 10 points of damage per level. Only you are immune to the effect. And that's the key part to this spell right here, is that only you are. So there's no friendly fire designations with this spell. You fire this off, hopefully your allies aren't nearby, because if you do enough damage to kill them, well, you know, you're going to kill them. It's a pain in the ass, but the thing is, it also deals 10 points of damage per level. So, you know, maybe you don't kill them, but you're going to deal a crap ton of damage in the process. And again, that's to everything within a 40-foot radius up to a max of your level. So going along with the 20th level witch example, that's 20 creatures you can potentially deal 200 points of damage to. But, and while that's a ton of damage, this is, again, only going to really affect living creatures. It's, I don't know, this one's kind of tricky, as I can see it affecting other kinds of creatures, you know, demons, devils, things like that, because this is, you know, it's pretty powerful magic, but it's just anything that has an immunity to, you know, fortitude saves, it has immunity relating to things like that, it's not going to be all that effective. But damn, doesn't it ever just fit with the witch's aesthetic. It's a great one to pick up, certainly a lot of fun to play with, but not the most mechanically effective option. And last but not least, on things that are just not that great, we have Cursed Earth. It's a touch spell, and it affects a 1 mile 1 mile radius from the spot that you've touched, and it's a permanent effect. It costs a pretty penny, though, 10,000 gold pieces worth of powdered onyx, and it takes 10 minutes to cast. So again, not one of these combat-oriented spells, but you get to choose one of 3 curse effects. First of which is Famine, which makes all plants wither and diminish. It suffers the diminished plants effect, and it reduces the crop yields and outputs of any fruit plants or fruit-bearing plants or anything that might be edible. Then you have Living Death, which all creatures that are small size or larger will that die in the affected area will come back 24 hours later as zombies. And then you also have Plague. At sundown, all creatures must make a fortitude save or contract a disease that you pick at the time of placing the curse. And Plague's probably going to be your most effective option, just given some of the choices that you have there with things like leprosy and the list goes on and on. But again, this is a 9th level spell. there's going to be plenty of creatures that are immune to disease, but where this is pretty handy, say you've been setting up your little hideaway on the material plane, and you want to make sure things keep away. So you've got your different sort of illusory spells down, you have different summoned and bound guardians, but now just to really make sure to hammer the point home and make your fortress as unassailable as possible, or hut, as the case may be, you place down this curse. So you throw down plagues, you throw down living death. The thing is that you can place this multiple times. You can pick different effects, and that's where this is handy. But bear in mind, every time you cast this is going to start adding up and racking up a lot of gold. So just casting it 3 times is going to be 30,000 gold pieces worth of powdered onyx. Level 20 caster, yeah, that'd be pretty doable, but that's also money that could be going towards other items, other effects, so many other different things. And, if you're digging into the whole party's coffers, they might be protesting a little bit that you're starting to burn so much up. But that's more of an issue for role-playing. But where I really like this spell is, again, it just fits so well with that classical image of a witch, just cursing the land, keep making the terrain as hostile as possible to any adventuring parties that might be coming after them. Also, from a roleplay and sort of a mechanic standpoint, cursing the earth like this is not a good act. I wouldn't say it makes you instantly evil, but certainly the cumulative effect of harm that you're creating for anybody that's in the area, happens to stumble into it, or if you're in a populated area and you're purposely diminishing the quality of their crops and their food output, that's definitely verging more into evil territory. Which, if you're an evil character, hey, good on you for playing to your alignment. But if you're trying to be some sort of neutral or good-oriented witch, well, this spell's probably not going to be doing it for you. It's not going to be keeping you within the scope of your alignment. But that's a discussion for another time. These are the 9th level spells. Certainly there are plenty more for each level of spells I've gone through, from 0 all the way up here to 9th. There are more spells, and not only that, this doesn't even touch on the possibilities of you working with your DM, or you DMs and storytellers out there coming up with your own unique and custom spells. That said, though, I hope this guide for all the different spell levels has been handy in giving you an idea of what's mechanically effective and what's less so, and helping you to kind of balance out both a little bit. Also, take the time to consider the different flavorings, the aesthetic, how well that fits in with the various archetypes for the different spellcasters. In this case, the witch, and make sure to incorporate that into the designs for any custom spells you may have in mind. Now, next up, we still have just a little bit more to go for the Witch's Guide. I'll be digging into the different kinds of gear that are going to be most beneficial for the Witch spellcasting class. Some of the more mechanically effective options, of course, and a few interesting ones thrown in there just to keep it interesting and not be solely 100% focused on just min-maxing everything and power gaming. Now, we got to have a little bit of story in there, at least 5% or so. But with that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all for your time, and you have yourselves a good night.